Morning, everybody. Everyone enjoy the keynote, enjoy breakfast. Awesome. So I know a lot of the focus today has all been on AI and stuff like that. I know you're going to hear that buzzword all day. We thought we'd take a little break from that and give you guys something a little bit different than AI. My name's Chris Watson. I'm sure I've worked with most of you out there. I've been with HiPoCON for 13 years. I do a lot of the Microsoft stuff, do some of the on-prem stuff, and then was kind of the lead to get everyone kind of going over to O365 and up to the cloud and those types of things.
My name is Brandon Truckee. I've been at HiPoCON now for around 3 years. Systems engineer, focused mainly on the Office 365 and Azure side, Microsoft Intune and all that.
So basically we're going to talk about, hey, can we dump our on-prem and go to just basically Enter ID only? Marketing makes a nice longer presentation title, but that is basically what we're going to be talking about today. Basically, we're going to just talk about, what's the current identity, what you might have, what is in the middle, what you might want to go to, some motivation, some planning. The planning and discovery is going to be the most important thing of this whole infrastructure that we're doing. And then we're going to talk a little bit about executing it and then what to do after it's there. If you've dealt with Microsoft, you get the bottom one. If I say Azure AD or ADP1, I mean Entra. Sorry, I've still not gotten flipped over. It's easy, right? It's going to be easy. Just flip a button and you're good to go and there's no problems whatsoever. It's not. There's people that have started this from 3 years ago and still working on it. There's some where they were smaller and we've got them up to the cloud only relatively shortly. It all depends on what's going on and we'll talk about that there. The easy button though, we can at HiPoCON help that make it a little easier if you need us to. Current identity structures or architectures. Yes, I know we all just say it's magic, but there is, foundational identity, we've got on-prem, okay? How many of you inherited an on-prem AD from way back when? Exactly. You don't know exactly what's going on, or you may have spun it up yourself, and it might be from 5-6 years ago where, you haven't looked at it since. So a lot of those are, when we'll talk a little bit more about this with security, did you turn off, NTLM1, SMB1? Have you gone through all the process of, securing your on-prem? And that's kind of where we want to look at of going, okay, there's some vulnerabilities on-prem that we can get rid of if we go cloud only and a little bit more security. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. Some of the cloud integration challenges, if you've got an on-prem and you have or you had an Exchange server, you might have got rid of it, you might have had the hybrid, you can kind of, the whole fact of, oh, I need to change an alias in somebody's thing. Well, you have to do it on-prem and sync it up because, your on-prem's the main data for all of that. And Microsoft was talking about, doing something where you could put a simpler application on your thing and you could do everything in the cloud and it would write back to on-prem. And of course, at some point, I don't know when, Microsoft said, you know what, we're not going to do anything with on-prem domains anymore. Might surprise you that they're looking at cloud only. But yes, it is, they are going cloud only. I'm surprised that they actually came out with this Exchange server. I'm surprised they just didn't limp 2019 along. So again, you've got some challenges with that hybrid whole situation. Seamless across all, environments. Once we get to the cloud, we can do a little bit more of that, but a lot of times, now in a hybrid situation, you've got the single sign-on where you've got, a lot of your stuff maybe as an enterprise app in O365. So you have utilized those types of things, so you pulled it off as an LDAP or some type of, configuration to your on-prem AD. One of the things that we're seeing a lot with that shift is VPNs on a firewall, setting that up to go to an enterprise app. and using Azure to do, your logins and stuff like that. Management, security, complexity, again, the complexity of it in the management, you're having to do some in the cloud, you're having to do some on-prem, some of the people, or some of you might have like a cloud-only group, so you're adding them there. You may have an on-prem only group, so you're adding them there. So again, we're just trying to reduce all of that complexity that's out there. Some of it might even be just management of the devices, and Brandon can talk about, some of the stuff that he's been dealing with Intune and stuff.
Yeah, so once you kind of get all your, you're going from on-prem to either a hybrid or a full cloud scenario, you can start utilizing tools like Microsoft Intune instead of GPOs to manage your devices. Once you get your identities synced up, your devices synced up, and then we'll have a session here at 3.
Yep.
That'll focus more on some things Intune, but mostly Windows hot patching or auto patch.
Because, everyone loves the I'm going to say WS server. I'll skip the S in there. That's deprecated. They're not doing anything more with it. You've still got some of those issues that are out there. I don't know of a lot of places where the WSUS server is actually running correctly. I mean, it works half the time, and the other half of the time a feature update comes through and it blows up. So some of that, complexity is going to go away, the management. Security is one that we'll definitely want to talk about, and we'll go into a little bit more of that in here. But just, keeping in mind that you doing it on-prem, you're not always keeping up with the latest, vulnerabilities, stuff like that, and you're maybe a little bit behind or just don't have the time. I know some of you guys are in a smaller IT shop, it's 1-2 people, or you've got a bigger IT shop and a bigger company, but you've got all this other stuff to do. Unified identity management, like I said, if you go into cloud only, you're not dealing with AD on-prem, you're dealing just with Entra. So we are just looking at one place to deal with it, all of that stuff. This is kind of where some of the other, things come into play of, how do we authenticate? How are we authenticating now? How are we going to do it from there? Simplified access control, people go to one place, log in, and then go completely, bless you, go to a different place, log in, different password, another place, log in, where now with the single sign-on, you log into Office, and then you open up the next one, and it's sometimes already logged you in, or you're just clicking log me in, and it comes over type thing. So a lot more simplified access control with that. Enhanced security, a lot of that is, really good with Microsoft. The key factor that I always mention there, and I mean, I've talked about this for years, is MFA, MFA, MFA. If you've got, Entra P1s and you can do some conditional access policies, do them. Get them set up, get them, so get some of the policies out there of, hey, if they're out of country, they can't log in, and start working to granularly go more of, if the machine is Entra joined, then we'll let you talk to all of the stuff in Microsoft or any of the other enterprise applications. If it's not Entra joined, then you can't talk to these applications, but you can get to this. And we do that internally here, where 99% of everything inside of HiPoint that we need to get to has to be from our work laptops. We don't do anything from our personal anymore. So that's one of those that enhanced security that, if you can get to, we can do a little bit more with those. Brandon, did I miss anything?
On security or?
Yeah, any of those. I don't think so. Key motivations for migrating. ADFS, if any of you are running ADFS, same thing, it's being deprecated out at some point. It's harder to deal with, a lot of times it's, hey, I'm in a hardware server refresh. Do I really want to refresh all that hardware? Can I go with a little bit less and get more into the cloud? And some of this is your boss going, I hear cloud and AI, let's talk about that, So some of it is driving up there. the nice part about it is the streamlined identity. You know, you're not doing it in two different places. You're not trying to, if you've gotten rid of your hybrid server, you're not trying to go into AD attributes and add a, you know, an email address inside of there and those types of things. So it makes those really, sometimes the IT people are just fed up with trying to do 3 different things in 3 different places. System dependencies, again, good and bad. I mean, just like with everything, you're moving the risk of something going down to O365 at this point rather than your on-prem stuff. So again, you're taking that risk up there. I know that most people, you know, we've all noticed some of the O365 downtimes and stuff like that have not been as much as what we've seen in some companies with their stuff going down. So again, it depends on your infrastructure and stuff like that. If you have an older infrastructure and you're like, this is just, it's that old car where, you know, I'm putting a new muffler on, I'm putting new air conditioning in, I'm putting a new alternator in, all of those types of things. Is it point to just get a new car or get a Tesla and let it drive for you type thing and pay monthly to drive your Tesla? Reduced system dependencies, we talked about that. Improved administration efficiency. Again, you're only going to one portal. You can do a little bit more with the security with that, and just doing some general, what am I trying to say? Easier way of administrating stuff, a little bit more granular. You know, yes, an AD, you know, you can say Exchange admin and you can, or not Exchange admin, but enterprise admin and give them some of the step down things rather than domain admin. But let's be honest, most people are just putting someone in domain admin because, oh, they need to do a user password, you know. So again, same thing that comes up there of, you know, you want to make sure that you're granularly setting those permissions up in the cloud just like you would on-prem. But again, it's giving you, rather than setting all those permissions up here and down here, you're setting them in one and not having to do with that. If you've got some bigger tenants, you can separate those out into like different domains and give people different permissions to those domains and stuff like that. So it gives you a little bit more granularity of what they can and can't do in the cloud as well. Conditional access. Again, I will never stress conditional access enough. If you don't have the P1s and you're still on security defaults, that's fine. Just make sure that, you know, you leave the security defaults on. If you buy P1 for one person and turn off security defaults to get that one person a conditional access policy, you've now opened up a big vulnerability because now you've turned off the security defaults and all those types of things. So again, if you're doing just some people, weigh that of, okay, now I'm turning off security defaults, so we're not getting that, hey, if I'm logging in and Microsoft thinks I'm whatever, the security defaults take care of that, but if they're not on and they're relying on conditional access policies, but nobody's in that, you've got some of those issues. So used to be, and again, I'm not saying that this is what you should do or anything else, is people would buy one license and then give it conditional access policies to everyone, going, Microsoft will never know. Yes, there is a report that we can pull that says, hey, you've got 95 users actually using the conditional access or Enter P1 benefits, but you've only got 50 licenses. So Microsoft does know now, so again, try and make sure that you're kind of keeping those up with the conditional access. Identity protection, unauthorized, you know, access to sensitive information, trying to make sure that we're, again, locking things down. You're making it a little bit easier where, you know, on-prem, you're saying, okay, I need to VPN in, and I'm going to say this right now with the VPN, if you have not updated your VPN and your firmware and all that stuff right now, and you've got somebody back at the office, after this, call them up and go find out what your firmware is. I would say out of the last 6 incidents that I've had to deal with at HiPoCON, they've come in through the VPN vulnerability right now. And it's not just Sonic Wall, it's all of them. So again, double check your firmwares, keep those up to date. This kind of gets rid of that whole extra layer of, oh, they got a VPN to get to this. Well, if it's in SharePoint or whatever, and now I can lock that down, then you're a little bit better off of not having that vulnerability. Compliance support, a lot of times this is that big thing of that people think, oh, I'm going to O365, I'm compliant with everything. It's not true. Microsoft on the back end is compliant. Okay, you got to keep that in your mind, that Microsoft on the back end is HIPAA and all of those compliant. When you spit up a new tenant, that is probably not compliant. So keep that in mind, that your tenant can be out of compliance, but Microsoft on the back end is compliant. So where they store your data and stuff like that, just make sure that you understand that going through of if you've got compliance, HIPAA, PCI, and some of those, then yeah, you may not be in compliance and you want to probably, get a security check done of what you're doing. We've come across that a lot where people are in a hospital and they think they're HIPAA compliant because they've moved everything to the cloud, and that's not true. There's no DLP in place. There's none of this stuff. So a lot of those that, are out there that you just want to be careful of. Did I miss something, Brandon? Because I feel like I missed something in there.
I don't think so.
Okay. Cost and operational efficiency. So this is kind of where, like I talked about with the car, I've entered a lot of money into this thing. Do I want to keep it? I also kind of focus it more on, okay, this is a lot like a TV show, that have gone on for 14 seasons. You may have gotten to 8 and been so invested, crap, now I got to go all the way to 14 to know that the ending sucks, That's kind of where you're at here is, you've invested a lot into it, it's there, but you've also, it's that car thing of, I've invested a lot into it, but I still need to keep investing more where it's not practical anymore to kind of do that.
Can you speak to those of us who are kind of between those 2 points? We didn't just buy a brand new Ferrari, but we've still got some life in our vehicle where we're in that more recent refresh window.
Yep. So a lot of times what happens is there, and like I said, some people, we started a lot of this way back when COVID hit. The schools were a big one. They had to start doing, online learning. They needed to get teams up and running. Hospitals needed to start communicating with other hospitals, and, they needed teams and those stuff. They had a whole infrastructure behind there. But, like the schools, they're like, yeah, our kids aren't even coming into here. Let's get them to Azure domain joined only. Let's work on this. So that has taken some of them 3 years, and some of them are still working on it. So it's, yeah, you need to start planning now and kind of lowering that down of what do I need if I can start moving these applications off. A lot of applications now are going cloud, QuickBooks, one of those wonderful things that is on a server you're trying to back up and, 18 people are on it and they're saving it here, there, everywhere. A lot of people are going to cloud-only QuickBooks. In fact, I think QuickBooks will probably go to only cloud at some point. So a lot of those types of applications, you start moving those off, you need less and less hardware. So it's just one of those things to keep in a mindset of where are we going from here and what do I need type thing. Lower maintenance expenses, you're not having to shut something down to do an update, You're not updating the server and, trying to get that sort of stuff done, or upgrading a SQL server, upgrading the Exchange server to SE and those types of things, where all of that other stuff is gone. It's all Microsoft taking care of it. Some of the stuff that I know is really good with that, with the maintenance expenses is, trying to get your machines imaged and stuff like that. Brandon, you want to talk a little bit about like autopilot and how, those types of things have now kind of lowered those maintenance types thing of what you've had to do.
Yeah, the nice part about with Intune and Autopilot is you can start kind of drop shipping devices to users instead of, imaging your device with a gold image or however you guys used to image devices. One thing that Chris was talking about, getting rid of hardware, is we all like printers, right? Everybody loves printers? Everybody like print servers? So with devices in Intune, and if you're utilizing conditional access with, let's just say, M365 Business Premium, if your printers support it, you can actually start moving those printers to Microsoft Universal Print. It used to be pretty expensive, but now Microsoft has been starting to include jobs. I think like Business Premium has like 100 print jobs per user per license, and it's all a pool. So that's one server you could look into getting rid of if your printers support it.
Yeah, so, and I like that. I mean, I know some of you are bigger, some of you are smaller. I mean, if you were to set up a pre-sales call with a lot of us on our team, basically we're going to say, what do you need for licensing? Business Premium. It's got everything in it. It's got all of these things. You can start looking at some front end, frontline workers, stuff like that, where, we can do some of the conditional access with those and stuff like that. But again, the Business Premium's kind of that, hey, I've got everything in there. I can start moving everything over to it. Some security stuff, your Windows Defender, and we'll talk more about that this afternoon or today, about that, what you get with Business Premium and stuff like that. So again, yes?
Just real quick, on that licensing and, a business versus the other, do you do a license audit to see if, there's probably a lot of customers out there that may have overbuilt their licensing, so
Yes.
to speak. So do we offer a licensing audit?
Yep, talk to your account manager and we can kind of set up a pre-sales call and kind of talk about those things. I know it's something that we want to work more on of, hey, how can we do this a little bit more automated, stuff like that. One thing we went to, and maybe some of you guys have already done it, we're going to a new program. It's called CIP, C-I-P-P, where it actually will allow us to go in on the back end, so we're not using our HPN admin account all the time to get into your tenants, and actually allowing us to do a lot of that stuff. And some of that inside of there is we can do a licensing report. So that's something that we can start trying to do a little bit more. I know it's something that, 5 years ago we said you need this, this, and this, and you went business, and then you added on P1, and then somebody might add on Intune. Well, now you should have just bought Business Premium, So again, a licensing review is something that you really should go to, especially if you're going to start looking at cloud only. What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? What licensing do I need? Because if you're going cloud only and you're getting rid of all the on-prem stuff, yes, Business Premium. And again, I'm talking if you're under 300, Business Premium is that sweet spot. If you're over 300, now we got to start looking at enterprise and stuff like that, and whether we're going to add on some of those and those types of things. So just something to keep in mind there. Consolidated identity services, again, this is where I really like, at HiPoint, we've got most of our stuff set up as an enterprise app. We've gotten rid of the, connection back to on-prem AD, so it's set up, we can set a conditional access policy to it and those types of things. We're not having to do a SAML connection from, your VPN over to there to try and do LDAP secure or, those types of thing, or an ADFS type thing. I like it as well because you can go into O365 and most of the time that app shows up if you broadcast it out and they can click on it right there. They don't need to go to another web page. They can kind of click on it there and it opens up. So a lot of times that's really nice too, or you can go to My Apps and what they have listed there and stuff like that. Again, some of those are a little bit more easier than others, but if you just set up an enterprise app and it's only for certain people, put it to publish to only certain people. And then they can just go into My Apps and it's going to be right there as one of their published apps. So, planning the migration process. Assessing your current infrastructure and dependencies. This is going to be the hugest thing and the hardest thing for you to do. And also kind of a little bit more on our side of the hardest thing that we can help you with. This is your environment. You know what's out there. Let me rephrase that. You know what you know is out there. Let's put it to you that way. We came across a customer that still had a 2003 domain controller that was running Access 2003 that he didn't even know about. And I went, okay, now we know where we need to at least start and work from there type thing. But we can help do some scans, stuff like that. But again, it's what is some of your applications? Do they support enterprise apps? Do they do SAML? Do they do some of these other things? How do we work on getting those apps off of on-prem? And then some of those biggest dependencies on trying to get this done and what takes the longest is some of these applications don't support modern auth through O365, so you're still stuck with trying to get them on-prem and connecting over and all of that stuff. I will say that a lot of them have gone up to being able to do an enterprise app. Sometimes what people have done is an app proxy. If you haven't done anything with those are real nice. You can come in from the outside, come back down into, you know, if it's a web-based type thing, you can route it through O365 and down. Some of the remote desktop stuff you can do as well to kind of, you know, do some of those things there. Some people are moving servers up to the cloud and just doing an app proxy over to that doesn't, you know, do that. Or like you said, you've got the hardware, I need to keep it there, you know, do we want to just keep that there? One of our biggest things is ConnectWise. You know, you guys get your tickets from, all of that stuff. It went to O365, thankfully, and it's on a server that, you know, yeah, it's a smaller server that we could start scaling down to, and at some point either move it to the cloud or figure out something different, because that's kind of, again, one of our struggles of how do we get rid of our on-prem domain? Well, we still need admins to do some of these, but the end user isn't ever going to see that, so it doesn't matter at that point. So some people are dropping the connection to O365, you know, dropping that dir sync, but their applications on-prem aren't either domain joined or they're on a domain joined server, but they talk to something else outside of that, but you can't get rid of that to a cloud service type thing. So those are also the other things that you can start looking at there. Again, legacy applications. This is kind of one of those, you know, biggest things that, you know, come up is I've got this legacy app. Yep, I know. We just need to figure out what we can do with that of an app proxy, or how can we do that and look at doing that. Or, you know, a lot of times people are starting to look at, okay, yeah, we want to do this. This is a good time for us to yell at our vendor and say, come on, let's do something with this application. Or it was built by somebody 18 years ago, that person's not even alive anymore, and you're trying to figure it out at that point. So a lot of times it's, okay, do we need to start looking at a new application? Yes, okay. As a part of that, let's put that we're getting rid of the on-prem stuff to get to those newer applications. Integration points analysis. So a lot of this is your file server. The things that hold back most people are the legacy apps, your file server. You know, how many still have a file server on-prem, got a shared drive? People's home drives are still tied to that. You know, the nice thing about the home drives is for the users, if you've got O365, it's real easy to convert those home drives into their OneDrive and not have that H drive anymore. I love it because my desktop shows up, my documents that I'm not supposed to store on my computer, you know, that people do, that they always will. I'm sorry, people are still going to store stuff on their computer in their documents. Nice thing with that is it gets synced up to O365. Now, if they create a whole new folder off the C drive, is that getting synced up? Not automatically. So it kind of helps with those types of things. You know, when they log in, they've got some of that same stuff back again. So I've liked that when we've done like some of the new computer refreshes and stuff like that. The other thing that, you know, is that issue that, you know, kind of holds people back is like what Brandon said, the print server, you know. We still have these printers out there. They're old. They don't do, you know, modern, you know, printing. You still need to have a print server, or we need a way to get those printers to it. If you're small enough where it's, hey, I've got one printer, 2 people are on it. Okay, do I really need a print server, or can I just, you know that if they get a new computer, I need to go add 2 printers for them, you know, type thing. So again, it's just kind of assessing what you have, what you can cut back on, and what you need to do. And Brandon, you know, like I said, talked about the printing.
Yeah, for not the printing, but mostly the like file servers. One thing we see a lot of when companies are trying to move their devices to Intune or just cloud only join in the devices, a lot of things that, or one main thing that holds a lot of people back is that on-prem file server that they're not ready to, you know, move up to SharePoint, move up to Azure or whatever. As long as you're syncing your identities from on-prem to Azure, you can still map file drives on cloud-only machines. because Microsoft will do that translation between the actual user's UPN and their domain credentials. So a lot of times we've seen that work for legacy applications as well. And then we can, start joining newer devices to cloud only and kind of breaking off of that domain tied architecture.
Have any of you started moving your machines to cloud only? Any new machines that you start doing, if you've got the Intune and stuff like that to manage it, start going to cloud only on the machines. You're still, like Brandon said, you're still going to get those permissions synced back down. The only difference is if you've got wireless and stuff like that, and you need cert-based and stuff like that, you need to do some SCEP stuff and those types of things with certs. So there's just, again, those types of things that we can help you work through of, hey, what do we need in order to get these to cloud only? Because again, that was probably a year and a half for us of, okay, we'll move this PC up to cloud. Okay, well, they can't get to the file share because we didn't sync the PC down, or, this didn't happen. Or, we couldn't join the VPN because we had said that it had to be joined to the HPN domain in our, SMA appliance. So it's kind of, how do you get across all those? How do you get through all of those types of things of, what can I work through of getting there? User compatibility. The user compatibility, there is no issue with user compatibility. The issue is with the user. And you all, the minute I said that, you all went, this person right here. Yep, that's the person. They don't understand, or they're still stuck on something. We've got some people in IT directors that are, probably 2-3 years out from retirement and very happy with where they're at, And that's kind of that whole driving feature of, hey, you're retiring in 3 years. We need to get this to the cloud. And now they're having to deal with that as well. So there's always those types of things that are also driving that of, what type of thing do we need to do? But again, it's mostly that user it's the user itself that's gonna have the problem. It's just like when MFA, we were starting to do MFA. You had some of the users, and I get some of the people that are in unions and stuff like that. Hey, we're not paying for their phone. We can't have them put an app on there. But there's always those 1 or 2 people that, oh, I have to put an app on my phone? If you can, okay, well, then you're fighting that and doing tokens and stuff like that. So again, those are probably the same people that are going to start going, what do you mean my machine's cloud only, or, those types of things. Or I need to get to the S drive. Well, that's in SharePoint now. We're not mapping an S drive for you. Well, how do I get there, type thing. It's that type of user compatibility that is there. So just to keep in mind. The application compatibility, again, what legacy applications do you have out there? How do we need to do some of those? How do we need to get those applications either to a cloud type service, or do we need to figure out how to get them off the domain and worked on something else? Device compatibility. I will let Brandon talk about that on some of the Intune joins and stuff like that on what those devices need to be.
Yeah, so for device compatibility, I have to think of the actual, what's the lowest Windows version for Intune, but
doesn't matter. Well, if you're talking 10, don't worry about it.
Yeah, Windows 10, all the things.
I don't want to see a hand raise, but if you're on 10, kind of remember that you've got about a month left of it not being supported unless you buy the extended support. But we've not seen any issues with going from 10 to 11. I mean, we've used Intune to push the 10 to 11 update out, and it's been flawless. You put them in a group, goes to there, they get a thing, hey, your computer's ready for Windows 11. Next time you reboot, it'll come up in Windows 11, and they're good. The only thing that, they see different is the bar going from over here to over here looking like Mac. That's kind of the only thing that is different.
Yeah, it's gotten significantly better. Nice part about, pushing all your devices to Intune. Intune has built-in reports with Windows 11 readiness checks, so it'll actually spit you out a report if the CPU, motherboard, whatever, has any compatibility issues with Windows 11. And it'll give you a, I think what they call is a work from anywhere score. and then tell you what devices, might need some attention or that are capable of upgrading to Windows 11.
So yeah, a lot of times it comes down to devices. Some people, and again, they'll go to Best Buy, they'll pick up a PC, it'll end up being home. Well, you can't join a home PC to Azure. So, you just need to be kind of cautious on what you're buying, how you're buying it and what you're getting from there. Phase migration strategy, again, we want to make sure that we understand who we're doing this to and everything else and how it works and stuff like that. Step-by-step planning. Who are we doing this to first, Let's do the VIPs first. Let's do the C-levels. Get them out of the way. No. These are not the people you want to do first. The one people that you should be getting IT group, obviously you guys should be first in doing that and then kind of getting to the point of, okay, I've now gotten a small test group that I want to do this to. And I kind of talk about this in the same as like when you're doing an Exchange to O365 migration. Inside of that test group, and again, everyone has that person in mind of they will always have issues, okay? Put them in that test group so that you start seeing because they have every problem under the world that you're going to see. And you all know who that person is. Put them in that initial test group so that you know everything that's going to start going on. Controlled transition, again, you want to just make sure that you're rolling it through, that you are just making sure that you're not pushing this across the whole thing. This is a timely matter. This is not something that you're going to be done by the end of the year on. Oh, by January 1st, I want to be cloud only. Probably not going to happen. Maybe by January 1st of next year, you will have it because we'll have that infrastructure in place. Testing and validation, again, please make sure you're testing, validating. If you pushed it out to somebody and they're saying, yeah, nothing's wrong, okay, are you sure? Did you try this? Did you try that? Well, no, I didn't. I only use that once a month. Okay, can you try it now? Can you do some of those things now rather than don't wait for the whole month to be gone through and you've done it to 2 other groups and now that month thing comes up and half your people can't work because they only use it once a month. So validate those things that aren't a daily process. Executing. So this is where depends on how big you are and how much time you have and everything else. So some of the automation benefits of a migration tool versus, right now, kind of Brandon, I'll let you talk on, if they've got a machine that's domain joined or even hybrid domain joined, what's the process of getting that to cloud only?
Yeah, so going from, domain to hybrid is relatively easy. You just, create a GPO and the device will enroll itself into Intune. Going from either domain only or hybrid only to cloud only, that's a lot more difficult in ways. Microsoft doesn't actually have a direct way to go from hybrid or domain only to cloud only. What we've seen a lot of is either just resetting the PC completely, getting enrolled into autopilot and having the user start from scratch, or using tools like ProfWiz to migrate the whole user profile over so the user keeps all their settings, keeps all their bookmarks and all their visual preferences.
Yeah. And this is a lot of the times where you start getting into, okay, if we've done our documents and we've done our desktop and those types of things syncing to their OneDrive, and all you're doing is installing application, do you really need to copy that profile over? Do you have all the information off that machine? If you tell them, hey, your machine's getting wiped, if you've got something other outside of documents that you need, make sure you get it into your OneDrive because we're just going to wipe it and then have you log in and it's going to autopilot it all out and stuff like that.
And one relatively new feature in Intune, I believe it's still in public preview, Windows Backup is going to, along with OneDrive where it moves all the documents folder, it'll also back up all the users' settings and visual, their wallpaper and everything else. And then upon, on the out-of-box experience page, you can restore from backup as long as that computer was in Intune and backed up.
So there are some native things that you can do. If you're like, nope, I'm not reinstalling, we've got AutoCAD on these machines, we've got this on the machine, I've got all these other programs on the machine that I will have to go reinstall because Intune can't push out, or my program that I use to push out software can't do it, well, okay, nope, let's work on getting it, the same machine and trying to get it domain joined and then, doing some of those types of things. Or Azure joined. There are some tools out there. The automation benefits, obviously, they will match the profile with it. It'll drop it from the domain, make it Azure only, match up the GUIDs with those people on-prem, and do those profiles over quite easily. If you've got a lot of machines that you need to do, or if it's just you and you're like, no, I want to get this done and I don't want to deal with this, the migration tools that are out there, and we've got a company that we work with that we can help you kind of do, is those things of, hey, how can we make this a little more automated rather than whatever? Some people are doing it now of saying, hey, anything that we do now going forward, any new machine is all cloud only. Okay, perfect. Now we've started that date of, okay, these are all cloud only, and now, somebody's machine gets messed up and we got to reimage it. Okay, perfect. Now's a good time to get it cloud only, those types of things. Identity government and access management. This is kind of where we can talk about some of that MFA stuff, phishing resistant, stuff like that. Going to cloud only, you're doing a lot more with, how can I log in rather than username, password, using Kerberos to a domain controller. Microsoft or a lot of the insurance companies are saying, hey, you have to MFA into these types of things. Well, now you can kind of do some of those types of things with Windows Hello and those types of things. Governance policies, again, the HIPAA and stuff like that, again, just because you have Microsoft or you have O365 does not mean that you're in compliance. Just make sure you understand that. Access control management, you've got the conditional access policies. You've got all those where you can get in. Security and compliance, again, remember those are two different things. You can be secure without being compliant, and you can be compliant without being secure. So you want to just keep that in mind of, what do I need to be for compliance and what do I need to be for security? And then continuous, system monitoring, prompt troubleshooting, post-migration optimization. This is kind of one of those bigger things of, okay, I've got everyone up to the cloud, but I haven't set up a lot of the Intune stuff to push out apps. I haven't gotten, the autopilot set up, or, I haven't done some of this other stuff. Well, this is where that optimization just keeps going once you're cloud only, of going, okay, now I can utilize this whole stack of what do I want to use and how can I make my life easier now that we're cloud only and not trying to tie into a domain. Before we top into the conclusion, here at HiPoint, we're trying to get to cloud only. Some of our file share, there's only like a little bit left on our file server that we're trying to figure out, okay, how does this go? Where do we want to put this? Do we want to put this in SharePoint? Do we want to put this in Azure Files and do an SMB over to it? How do we want to do that? And that's where we kind of are going, okay, that's kind of our last little thing, because most of our apps are being able to tie it into O365 and an enterprise app and those types of things. So again, we're getting real close to being cloud only as well. So that's kind of where we're trying to drive that. Simplified identity, again, just one place to do it. Enhanced security. I know that you guys have firewalls, you guys have, good password policies and all that stuff, but I can guarantee you some of you probably have SMB1 or NTLM running or some of those things that make you less secure. So some of those things you don't have to worry about because they are in Office. Improved efficiency. Again, you don't have to deal with 2 different places. You don't have to deal with a bunch of the other stuff, updating, 6 servers, 18 servers throughout, the quarter and stuff like that. Careful planning is needed. You have to do planning. The planning part of this is probably almost the longest process that you're going to have of discovery and then trying to figure out what to do. Awesome. Well, we'll end it there. We'll give you guys some time to go visit some vendors or talk. And like I said, Brandon and I will be all around all day, and let us know what you need.